Welcome to the Backyard Horse Enthusiast. Today's episode is proudly brought to you by Shagbark Lumber and Farm Supply, your trusted partner for over 4 decades, offering quality products and services for all your farm, home, and equine needs. A huge thank you to Shagbark for supporting equestrians and animal lovers everywhere. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Gabrielle Diakon, the founder of GMD Training. Gabrielle is an exceptional equestrian trainer dedicated to building harmonious relationships between horses and their riders. At GMD Training, her focus is on creating confident equestrians and balanced, happy horses through customized training programs that are rooted in classical principles. Gabrielle's passion lies in fostering trust and understanding, whether she's working on groundwork, riding skills, or solving challenges. Her tailored approach ensures that every horse and rider duo achieves their goals while deepening their bond. Join me as we dive into Gabrielle's inspiring journey, her impactful training methods, and the incredible work she's doing at GMD Training. Now let's get started.
Oh my goodness. Gabby, welcome to the Backyard Horse Enthusiast. We are so pleased to have you joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I have 10 specific questions for you that I would like to go through. Take your time. Tell us as much as you'd like to share. Our audience is always really happy to learn more. And I do want to let our viewers know that all of Gabby's contact information is in the description box, as well as her website. So you can click on that and go out and get more information if you'd like to do any of the coursework that she offers and training. And at that, I shall begin. So you focus on teaching horse owners to listen to their horses.
Yes.
But what are some of the key signals that horses give when they're uncomfortable? And how can horse owners become more attuned to what their horses are trying to tell them? What are the signals?
Awesome. I love this question. So they vary greatly between each horse, of course. So we take into the horses, personality, their, how stoic they are. And I'm a mare girl, so thankfully they're pretty vocal. But some aren't, so it's really important I'll start with like the really obvious ones and go into really what I teach people to look for. So there are things, ear pinning, when it comes to saddle fitting. When there's behavior issues with putting the saddle on, that's always something I really want to invite people to look at. They may say, my horse has had these problems for its whole life. Since she's been saddled, she's had this problem. And I'll look at this horse and I'll say, well, this horse is quite a tricky fit. So it makes sense to me that they probably haven't had a correctly or a properly fit saddle on since day one. So it makes sense to me that they've had these behaviors this whole time. And what's really cool or what's incredible is within a few months of having a properly fit saddle on these horses, that behavior will go away. So things like hopping into the trot can sometimes signal to me that their shoulder is stuck. If their ears are pinned through the transitions, it probably means that something is bothering them. Usually what happens is a saddle slips onto the shoulder through transitions. That's a very, very common one if I see their ears pinned. Other things that I notice, eyes. I really look at their eyes to know if they're comfortable or not. It's just the same way we read a human emotion. So if you look at your horse in the eye and say something is happening that they're uncomfortable with, but they're really trying to not be difficult because they're absolutely amazing animals, you'll see a change in their eye, whether it's sad or scared. I see a lot of fear there sometimes. And I just invite my students to kind of take a step back in that moment, to breathe with the horse. I do a lot of trailer loading sessions for my clients. So right at the moment of resistance from that horse, instead of pulling them onto the trailer, what we do is we stand and we breathe. And it seems so I guess, basic or easy. But when I tell you that there have been rescue horses that haven't been able to load in a trailer in, gosh, over 5 years, and they have severe trauma, after they just are heard and they are listened to, and we stand with them and we breathe, I've seen absolute, and it's nothing less than miracles happen where the horse just goes, oh my gosh, thank you. And then they walk on. Now, sometimes too, though, like I have a quarter horse and he's just like, no, thank you. And so if I stand and breathe with him, he's like, thank you, but now I'm definitely not going to go on. So I like, it's very varies with like if they're trauma reaction or if they're, just some of them are just having fun. They're a little, they all have their personalities. So he sometimes I have to be like, I'm breathing, but let's go. He's like, fine. But the last thing I'll note that's um, a one that really gets overlooked when it comes to saddle fit is the area of discomfort where, especially with these extremely athletic horses. So I work with a lot of Lusitanos and a lot of high level horses that they're very good at isolating muscles. Like it's incredible what they can do. So what they will do when they are uncomfortable, instead of making it known through the whole body, say their heads up in the air, or they're having a hard time cantering, these horses are so powerful that they can work through the pain, but they will isolate the muscle in their back right behind the saddle and contract it. So I'll watch a horse go around and they look, they're in a frame, they look like they're carrying themselves well, but that one spot of the back is just tight and it's right behind the saddle. And that tells me that the panel is hitting them in a place that feels very uncomfortable. So they'll isolate there or they'll trail out a little bit behind, and it'll be so small in comparison to a horse that just like blatantly isn't moving correctly. These horses are so incredible that they can isolate this muscle just a little bit to kind of say that hurts, but I'm going to power through with every other part of my body. So that's a really important spot that I notice for. And then, there'll also be things of discomfort with back pain, and that one's pretty self-explanatory, but I do invite my riders to just take their hand down the horse's back after each ride and just see, like, are they uncomfortable? Are there areas of tension? And I do sadly see this kind of, how do I put this? Something that's kind of accepted in some barns as normal, which will be soreness, to an extreme that is not normal. So I really invite you to kind of take another look at that and say, if my horse has to be on muscle relaxers after every show or this or that, I really encourage people to look at their saddle because that's not normal. And horses don't have to live in pain when they're in a work program. They can be sore, absolutely, right? Like they're athletes, but they don't need to be in pain. And there's a different type of pain where you palpate the horse's back and it'll be like, you can see them. It's like they don't even like being brushed there. Definitely evaluate those things because horses don't necessarily need to be in pain where a saddle is. When a saddle fits well and a rider is in balance, they really don't have to experience that type of pain.
Oh, thank you. Now we're going to touch on something else that you do, yoga for every equestrian.
Yes.
And you offer meditation-based clinics, right?
Yes.
So how does yoga and meditation help equestrians enhance their connection with horses?
So I love this. This is my favorite clinic ever to teach. And yoga for every equestrian started off as more of a biomechanics course because I was a very not naturally talented rider as a child. I started early, yes. And boy, did I commit. And I knew I loved it. And I knew like I wanted so badly to work with these animals. And it's just like, oh, poor little young me, did she struggle. So I took some incredible trainers and it took some, unfortunately trainers that really beat me down to then go to a trainer that was so kind and encouraging, to see that I went from it within 1 year, I went from jumping cross rails, if that, to going to a meter 10 within 1 year, because I just went to a trainer that was kind and encouraging and not unsafe in any way, but just really taught me the basics and the biomechanics and just made it so much easier for me and made me confident in myself, which made the horses more confident with me. So that's when I really got obsessed with biomechanics and energy work. So I went to get my yoga certification, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know how to control my body outside of the saddle, let alone in the saddle. Like this is amazing. Like this helped me so much with, working my own muscles, body awareness, which is so crucial. I mean, when I was a kid, I would go around courses at horse shows and be like, I have no idea what just happened. Like, I don't know. I was so not in my body. And so it was just such an incredible experience. And I tended, at this point, I was teaching riders, and I tended to attract nervous riders because I could empathize with them, and I could really, I felt for them. So I was so excited to bring these tips and tricks to them. And then that just grew into, locally, people were asking for it. And I'm so blessed. I've gotten to teach it all over the country, but it's progressed past just biomechanics, and it was biomechanics and energy work. But what I've found, there's so many incredible biomechanics trainers out there. There really are. And what I found is that when I got to the meditation piece of this work, and I got to the emotional healing piece of this work, disclaimer, we do cry at clinics. Like almost always people cry. And I was like, at this point, I need to wear a shirt that says, we probably will cry. But those are the moments that people were like, this has completely changed my perspective or my relationship with my horse. Or what was so incredible is when people cry, the horses calm down. Because they are craving emotional congruity from the person that's with them. They don't care if the person is scared. They don't care if they're, I feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves to be this perfect being in the horse world. Horses don't care. They just want you to be authentic, because that's what they're looking for. If they're out in the wild and a lion is smiling, but like also wants to kill them, they're very uncomfortable. So the same goes for, they just need to know that what you're feeling is what's on the surface. And it's okay to be, and I find that I actually will tell my students to like, instead of fighting off their fear, tell the horse you're scared. Be okay with it, because they want to be a partnership. They really do. And before this started, we were talking about our horses like protecting us and standing with us. And it's okay to have a partnership that's both. And of course, for safety, we make sure we have our boundaries, and we make sure that, everything is established, but all they want is a partnership and connection, and to allow them in to our emotional world is just so special.
Indeed. Oh, thank you. Saddle fitting is a crucial part of horse care. So tell us or explain to us how a poorly fitted saddle can impact a horse both physically and emotionally.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love these questions. So physically, your horse's top line is everything. It is absolutely crucial physically that a horse is able to move properly. What happens when they're not in a properly fit saddle, as I mentioned before, but we can get a lot of different muscle atrophy. We can actually, like, they'll start to carry their head up and get muscles and areas in their neck that they shouldn't have them. They'll get under muscled in certain areas. But I will share this story because I think this just paints it perfectly. So I actually found saddle fitting. It was over 10 years ago. by a wonderful saddle fitter. Her name is Mary Shields. She's located in Tampa. So if anybody's in Tampa, Florida, and they need a saddle fitter, she's incredible. I had an off the track thoroughbred he was the sweetest horse alive. He would pack anybody around a course, like awesome. And then he started bucking and we couldn't really figure out what was going on with him. And the vet came out. She's like, well, we can inject his stifle, or we can, all of a sudden the puzzle starts coming and we're like, well, we can try this or we can try this. And I was like, oh, I just don't know. So I gave him some time off. And then I take him to a clinic with Holly Winkeljohn, she's a Western dressage trainer in Tampa. They're my favorite people. Um, and Mary Shields happened to be there and she was watching me ride. And she very politely just pulled me aside. And I was a professional at this point. She was very, very kind about it. And she goes, hey, I just want you to know, like, your saddle doesn't fit. Like, I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, nobody growing up, even in my professional training, ever told me about saddle fit. It was, as a trainer, you brought your saddle around from horse to horse. That was just what you did. And, she just so kind about it. So just put this saddle on him for the rest of the clinic and just, see how it goes. Didn't buck, no problems, could trot. It was such a light bulb moment for me where I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I had no idea how much I was restricting this horse's movement and causing other problems by riding in a poorly fit saddle. And of course, like I knew up at that point, like the withers are clear, it fits in the front, but I had she really went into the nitty gritty with me about it and it completely changed my whole perspective. So I really do encourage people, like if you have a hunch or a feeling like, oh, something just doesn't feel right here, you're probably right. And sorry, I know I'm a rambler, but the last part of the question, emotionally, that for me is the biggest part. I do tell my clients a lot, like when I do my saddle fittings, I do a lot of energy work, a lot of energy reading, because at the end of the day, we can look at something as a textbook fit and say, okay, well, the tree shape fits, this fits, this fits. But I'm going to go back to my example I used with the Lusitanos. They're very energetically sensitive horses and they're very athletic. So they're the ones I see the most. This is going to sound so odd. They hate the feeling, the texture of certain panels. It can be the exact same saddle in foam and in wool, but for whatever reason, they prefer the feeling of one versus the other just because of the way it sits on their back and it invites them up and underneath themselves. And there's still some things to this day with horses where I'm like, I don't know.
But I know, but I don't know.
Exactly. I'm like, I know this works, but please don't ask me why, because it's just something through listening to the horse that I've really narrowed down on and gone, okay, like, this hitting this horse and the emotional, like I'll watch them go around during a saddle fitting and I'll just watch their eye, or they won't be chomping on the bit all of a sudden, or this, so it is emotionally, like they're so grateful once they have a saddle that fits. They're grateful to the owner, they're grateful to whoever is helping them. I mean, they know, they really do, when we're just there to help them, and it makes them enjoy their job.
And again, don't you think they're being heard. Now they know they're being heard. You're taking the time to investigate and work through this and try different things and make adjustments to get them to a comfortable place, which has to build the trust. It builds that trust and connection to where I can relax and allow you to be a leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
As like an alpha mare in a herd. The rest of the herd gets to graze and really do most of the relaxing, right? And you got the stallion way out there, and then you've got that alpha mare, and they just wait for that mare to make the most minute signal. An ear moves, an eye, the head might come up a little bit or whatever, and then they know, okay. And but they get to actually enjoy life a lot more than that alpha mare because they're
Yeah.
just depending on her. But they know she's going to make all the right moves. She's going to keep us out of danger and keep us safe. Yeah.
I love that. I use that example in almost every clinic I teach. And like, if a horse is looking at something and they're a little bit spooky, people's instinct is to pull them away from it. But actually, if you look at it and you're calm about it, then they go, oh, okay, she sees it. My
Right.
owner is present. That's all. They want you to be present, and then they feel safe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And yeah, again, if a horse alerts, if Dakota alerts me to something, I'll literally like point at it. Oh, that we're good. Oh, all right.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It can actually be that simple. Why would you get into a fight with a 1,200-pound animal?
I know. And
What is that going to do? It's like a child, like how do you feel safe when if your body is signaling to you, you're a horse or you're a child and you're fearful of something, you know what your gut is telling you. I was afraid of that. And then the person who's supposed to keep you safe says, "Don't be stupid. There's nothing to be afraid of." Oh, you mean I can't trust my gut?
I think, and I hate to get on the soapbox, but I feel the exact same way too about students. If you like, and trainers belittling fear, I just think it's like, no, no, you're allowed exactly what you said. Like, yes, trust your gut. And if you're not ready for something, that's okay. And it's the same with the horse. Like, oh my gosh, I love that you just
Right,
said that. Yes,
right.
the
I,
confidence
I
comes from being heard.
huge, huge. This is a story. It's not about horses. I'm an avid cyclist and I was an avid mountain biker and I was out at China Camp in Sausalito, California, out mountain biking with my partner. And he was a pro cyclist. I was not. So just like with horses, one day I'd feel confident and one day I really didn't. So when I didn't feel that confident, I didn't do a lot. I did what I was comfortable with, but I did something but what I was comfortable with. And one day I'm out there in China Camp, you've got bluffs and you got ravines and you're jumping these ravines. And I jumped one and I wasn't feeling confident that day. What I should have done was get off of my bike and carry it, right? But oh no, I'm going to do it. Well, guess who's hanging off a bluff hundreds of feet, holding on by a limb, right? And I'm clipped into my bike and I'm holding it with my knees because I have a, $3,000 deposit on my rental. And my partner finally comes back and I'm like, get the bike, and I'll climb up. But that was that day. Now, the next day we go out and do the same trails, but I'm feeling good.
Yes.
I clear that ravine. And I just nailed everything that day, but not the day before. The day before, everything did not feel right. I didn't feel like my balance was good. I didn't feel like my eye-hand coordination. I couldn't trust picking up a line. Like nothing was computing. And I probably had cocktails the night before, which didn't help, right? But I should have, if I had listened to my gut, I wouldn't have been hanging from a limb off the side of a bluff, right?
Yes. Like, and it's so fun. I feel like people think it's like, no, push through the fear. But my worst injuries have been when I was pushed through fear. When if I had a trainer when I did have a trainer that listened to me, like I said, I went from cross rails to a meter 10, all because if I had a day where I was like, I just don't feel right, she'd give me tools to work through something else. We'd go back to basics, strengthen myself, and then go. And then it's like, when your confidence is improved through being listened to and somebody's understanding and they're giving you tools and saying, maybe you don't understand this that well, but let's figure it out from this direction. Like, it gives you such a faith in yourself, but also the person that's there for you. And it's same with the horses. That person is your person, that they're gonna be there for you. You can express yourself. You can say, hey, today I don't feel well about this, and you're not going to be judged. And I think like, yeah, unfortunately that wasn't always the case. And I was in some pretty bad wrecks because I just was pushed past a point that I, I shouldn't have, and I should have also, and it's so empowering to go to, you grow into yourself. Of course, I was younger, so I didn't know that I'm fully empowered and allowed to say no. And I love to tell students that because I think it's so important to know, like, I know it sounds so intense, but it's so true. It's your body. That is your body. And you are allowed to say no and don't get shamed for it. It's not, so I think that that's just so important to really,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I love it. And you had mentioned before we hit record about loving mares, right? So
Yeah.
I totally so related to this, Gabby, because I have been made fun of by some really big trainers out there that are like, oh my God, why you always picking a mare? Always, when I'm gonna start a horse under saddle, I'm like, this filly I got, oh my God, and like, well, oh
Yeah.
man, always. And I'm like, I'll tell you this, I find that geldings are more stoic and won't share with you, right? A
Mm,
mare is like, you know what? Today, I don't really think I want to do that. And if
yeah.
you're stupid enough to ignore that message, right, you're
Yes.
gonna end up in trouble. So even if I was on a tight show schedule and I needed to get my horses conditioned and ready for the show ring, I'm working a horse and that horse is like, not today. I'm like, cool. Let's go out on the trail. Let's go have some fun. Let's just relax, right? And
Mhm.
the next day I always had a happy horse that was like, "Hey, thanks for listening because I just wasn't feeling it yesterday and I'm glad you heard me. And I'm here today to give you everything I got."
And it's so spot on because the behavior never gets worse, it gets better. Like
Hmm.
I love mares, and actually all of my biggest opportunity horses that I was privileged enough to be able to ride because they had some sort of, behavioral, I'll call it a glitch, but for some reason, rearers, that sounds so funny to say, but horses that rear were always something that for whatever reason I really connected with, but it was because two steps before the rears when I listened to them and I would back off, and it never made the behavior worse. It always made it better. And it's been and the relationship I've developed with those horses from simply going, "Hey, I'll listen," was phenomenal. I mean, just deeper and stronger than any other horse because they gave me the opportunity to listen and I took it. So yes, I fully relate to that. Like if they always come out stronger. Even if it's listening to them in the smallest, when you're grooming them of, hey, I need more here or whatever it may be, it's just incredible. And they're waiting for that one, for just somebody to just say, hey, I am listening.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Amen. Whew. You mentioned that the process of saddle fitting goes beyond the physical aspect and fosters bonding. So, can you describe how tuning into a horse's needs during saddle fitting strengthens the horse-human relationship?
Yeah, so I think that is such a perfect segue from what we were just speaking to. But like I said, I can see the difference in a horse's energy from the start of the session when this strange lady comes and she's palpating their back and feeling for pain, and they're like, oh my gosh, to realizing that, oh, she's here, she's trying to make improvements and she's listening, and oh, all of a sudden, oh, this does feel better. Or so I think the same goes with the owners, and they start to go, let me really tune in and see like how I can make this horse more comfortable. A horse knows when you are listening to them and you're taking those little signs. And um so I do think it strengthens a relationship, but even further than that, I use it as a body awareness tool. Or so I had no feel as a child. Like I just because I wasn't in my body, I was so nervous all the time that I couldn't feel the horse because I could barely feel what was happening within me.
Sure.
So what I do with the saddle fit is I use it as an opportunity for owners to really tune into their bodies and their horses, because I'll be like, okay, now how does the left shoulder feel, or how does the right hind feel? And that also creates such a stronger connection in the sense of you're really connected to that horse. And it's just such a special opportunity for horse and rider to really take that time and go slow and feel every little minute detail at the walk, at the trot, at the canter. And I do encourage too some of this feel to be done on a really long rein. Just see, what does this horse want to do when we're not. Yes. Yes.
Indeed. Yes.
And it's funny how, you know, they also seek, just like we want to trust them, they want us to trust them. It's so important for a horse to feel trusted, because, and I heard somebody say this is not my quote. I wish I could give credit to this person, but if I can remember, I'll send you their name. But they said something like, oh, if you don't trust a horse, they ask themselves, what is wrong with me? Why does this person not trust me? And of course, and I don't mean that to put pressure on anybody, because there are certain situations where I show up for a lesson and I'm like, ooh, this might not be the best match, right? Like, I think there's also a little bit of that where I think we have to
Right.
be honest with ourselves. Like, please, like, let's keep ourselves safe. I've come across horses where I will say, look, I don't, unfortunately, for whatever reason, usually there's an underlying medical problem. I don't feel safe being a
Sure.
part of this horse's journey, because we do have to protect ourselves. So I always want to put that out there. But yeah, horses, they want to be trusted, just like we want it. It's just like if we had a best friend that was like, oh, I don't really want to tell you this secret. You'd be like, oh, excuse me.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm insulted. You don't
Yeah,
trust me, clearly. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. My best rides, and my guy Dakota is a fox trotter, so he's a gaited horse, right? So
Hmm.
how are you typically taught to get that gait, to get that fox trot and all of that? You've got to have this, straight connection to the mouth, and it's this, it's a constant contact with their mouth and with your seat and your legs and all of that. However, my best rides on this boy are out on the trail on the most draped rein, right? Even though he's a gaited horse, honest to God, his natural movement, moving out there on the trail, his pole is right at his wither on a complete, and he's like so totally chill. And I'm like, if I didn't know any better, I think I'm on a quarter horse. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what I rode most of my life, rode and
Yeah.
showed, but he's my first gaited horse. And it just totally like blew my mind that he could be so relaxed, so happy, so at ease on a completely draped rein out in the middle of the woods, and just happy. You can feel his happy,
Oh,
It's
you
I
can
love
feel they're happy. Yes, the floppy ear. And that's what I tell
it.
people in saddle fitting so much. Like, look for the happy. Like, it's like their ear, the head's swaying. They're getting a little like almost too loose sometimes. Like, you just brought up such a good point that for one of the questions you asked me before, like, what's the energetic piece of saddle fit? So speaking of another Lusitano, they are just a really great example because they're so different. Like, they respond to things so drastically. So my client, we got her in a saddle that fit this horse just so beautifully, and he loves it. And she texted me, she said, I have a different horse. Like, I can take him out for hacks on a loose rein. And it's that he's loose, he's just swaying. She's like, I don't even know who this horse is. Like, he would have never gone for a hack by himself on a loose rein. So that is huge. It's like when they're uncomfortable, of course, they're going to be nervous. But when they're comfortable, they feel safe. They feel, and I don't know if this is a weird parallel to draw, but so I recently had to have a hip replacement. And I've noticed that when I was in the saddle, I would get a little bit less confident in my ability because I had this weird thing behind me. Like I'm uncomfortable in my hip and I can't swing off as quickly as I want. So I parallel that to, and it just coming to me, so it can make absolutely zero sense. But a horse that's uncomfortable and feels trapped in a saddle goes, I can't get my legs to move quickly if danger comes. So they're going to constantly be on high alert. Where a horse that's free and they're naturally moving, just like what we do with the groundwork to move their legs to make them know that they're safe. And it's the same thing under saddle. If a horse feels pinched or trapped, or God forbid, my gosh, the withers, that's just, they really get grabbed there sometimes in places you wouldn't even notice. So the panels come out sometimes a little harsh. That's always something to check along the side of the wither. But yeah, they don't feel safe because they don't have their body to move. And, I think that's a really powerful tool when we think about it like that.
Yeah, and to take it a step further, if I may,
Please, I love it.
something that I do these inner child healing work groups, right? And a lot of times when people are when they're triggered, period,
Yes.
they're in limbic, right? So they're reactive. So you're in pain and you're just like, right? So I feel like that would trigger you to be in limbic all the time. So you're highly reactive to everything. Every piece of
Yes.
stimuli is like, oh,
Yes.
right? Because when I'm out on the trails with this beautiful gelding of mine, a gaited horse on a completely draped rein that's happily going along, I don't feel any energy that feels like he's going to be crazy reactive. And now this is a prey animal I'm riding, right?
Mhm.
But it's just,
Yes.
so you
Like that
eliminate the
freedom for the
pain,
body.
eliminate the trigger, eliminate being in limbic mode all the time, which is completely reactive, which can cause a dangerous scenario.
One of the most common things I see with a poorly fit saddle is spookiness
Mm.
because exactly what you just said. I absolutely love that. And it's the way, I don't know, something about the way you were moving your body there reminded me of in my clinics, we do a lot of trap trauma work and exactly what you were saying, like we move through the body and I will have some people on very nervous horses do something that they're like, I don't feel like this is a great idea. So we go very slow with it, but I have them swing their legs back and forth, the rider, just to move their hips, just to get like loose and like, exactly what you're just doing, like feel very free in the body. And they're thinking, well, if I'm moving my legs around, my horse is going to blow up. All of a sudden, that horse starts to swing and calm down and go looser, and the head comes down. And they start to stretch their vertebrae out. So it's like sometimes I remember this story. I used to start warm bloods for a living because I apparently thought that, anyway, I was definitely wouldn't do that now. But there was this one warm blood that I was so scared of. I have to be totally honest. And they'd be like, okay, take him out for a hack. And I'd be like, okay, you hate me too. I got it. But yeah, I'm like, no, it's fine. Yeah, I can do this. And I was like 21, so I was like really trying to prove myself as a trainer. So I would do anything. But I would take this horse out and I would convince myself that I was on your steady Eddie lesson horse and I would flail my body. I probably looked like a lunatic, but I would flail my body around. I would rub his neck all over and be like, "He's the best boy." And that was the trick. And he would soften and walk calmly and just be like, probably he was like, he was probably so distracted by this lunatic on his back that he was like, it's fine. I'm not worried about the woods. Like, I'm worried about this thing. But it really does work. Sometimes if you just tell yourself, like, I trust my horse so much, and we do trust meditations. Like I know we were talking about earlier, where you just like, you feel the trust in the body, you give it to the horse. And every single time without fail, when we go into these meditations on trust, the horses lick and chew and they soften.
Yes.
I haven't had it. I have not had one horse not have that reaction.
I love it. I had a trainer a few years ago, back in like 2016. world judge, really excellent trainer. But that's beside the point. One day he came into the arena. He goes, "You know what I want you to do? I want you to just drop those reins, ask for a lope, even if it's a gallop, and don't steer, and just let Teddy go wherever he wants and just go for it." And I did. And I'm like a couple minutes into it and I am laughing. I'm giggling. I'm having, and you could, Teddy was having the best time of his life. And it
Yes.
created such a bond of trust between he and I. There was nothing
Mhm.
we couldn't do together, that old man and I. Truly. And he was one of those stoic shutdown horses that really was not listened to all that much. And this really gave both of us an opportunity to bond in such a way with such trust. And no, I literally dropped the reins and we just galloped all wherever he wanted to run to, whatever he wanted to do, we did.
How special. I
It was
love
like
that.
after that.
Yes. And it's exactly what you're saying about like the bike riding. It's like when it's intentional and you feel confident with it and you're having fun, your body goes with it. And it's like, yes, oh, it's so cool. I love it. They do. And that pride you see after, like if you are working with a horse and they're like, yeah, I know I'm cool. Like, and they just like, they get so proud of themselves.
Yeah.
They're the best.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, oh, I love this.
Me
But
too.
now I must ask you, my dear, what
Yes.
inspired you? What was the inspiration for you to get into saddle fitting? And how does the saddle fitting complement your work in teaching equestrians to listen to their horses?
Oh, I love it. I love the way you worded it too. So, I've been teaching the yoga for every equestrian clinics, and I would get to these clinics and we would make, such beautiful progress, but I would always just see this spot on the horse and I just be like, it's the saddle. Like I can't help. And I've even had some people, as long as they trust their horse, I'm like, just get the saddle out of here. Like, can you just go bareback for this? Because it's mostly walking, and they would, and they just see the difference. So paired with my first experience with saddle fit, thank you, Mary Shields, to then starting to teach these biomechanics and the mindfulness, I just realized that there was such a piece to this where I could help horses so much faster by fixing their fit and making them comfortable. And I did share a little bit, like I've had to have a few hip surgeries and I wasn't able to ride, which at the time to me was like the worst thing in the world. I was like, this is my dream. I can't believe I can't ride. So it actually, again, Mary Shields, she said to me, she's like, why don't she, because I'd already been helping my clients with saddle fit and I'd already been using that as a tool. And she said, why don't you do saddle fitting, full time? Like she's like, you can't ride. And I was like, oh, it's always those divine ideas that you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But I listened to her and it has been just the most incredible journey with these horses. And the piece of it, exactly like you said, it's teaching people how to listen to their horses and the minute differences with the saddle fit. So I approach saddle fit from a completely different standpoint. I do obviously know, like I've been to many, many trainings and I'm constantly learning the textbook saddle fit. But what I do is I watch a horse and really listen to their preference. So, I'll say, okay, in specific, so we'll talk about a short back because that's everybody struggles with horses when their backs are short and they're like, I need their shoulder to be clear, but I need the saddle to be the correct length. And, I find sometimes that it's actually, I'll be like, okay, the horse doesn't mind this length, but we need it to slope just a little bit more because I can tell when they go in that saddle that they feel a lot more comfortable coming up and underneath themselves. So I do really put the emphasis on what the horse is telling us. So, we'll do all the things we need to make the horse really comfortable, but we'll take it a step further and go, what do they want from this? Or where do they feel the most comfortable? Or how do they need their rider? So, that's really what inspired it, was just the ability to take such a deeper look at this horse's comfort, and to help so many riders and horses has been such a blessing. I really like the text messages I get of people saying exactly what we're talking about. Like, I got to experience my horse out on a trail ride for the first time where he just enjoyed himself, and to help these horses enjoy themselves and to help the riders enjoy themselves. And, it's such a crucial part of it. And I just think it's really just been such an incredible journey.
I
I
love
hope
it.
that answered the question. I think I just went off on a tangent.
Absolutely. Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Do you ever encounter someone where you're like, honey, it's not your saddle. You're just a horrible rider. No, we need to start you at ground zero.
I will say this, and I don't feel bad saying this, but I will say if I do hear a lot of blame placed on the horse, I know that we probably won't get along very well. And I'm okay saying that.
Excellent. I like that. Oh
Yes.
my gosh. Okay, so through GMD training and saddles, you work with horses and owners that are facing tricky situations. Would you share a memorable case where a proper fitting and listening to the horse led to a breakthrough? You
Ooh,
probably have had a lot of them, but
gosh, that is a good one. Because yes, it's so often. Let's see. I feel like just this week there was a really good one. Okay. So I just received this oh my goodness, text message the other day. So this girl, she rescued her horse, and her horse is just an awesome mare. And she's very sensitive though, like extremely sensitive, and sometimes like gets very overwhelmed and starts to panic. And that she wants to work cows with this horse so badly, and they've created such a beautiful partnership. But under saddle, the horse was very nervous, and the rider blamed herself. And it broke my heart because I could see that it was pain. The only reason that this horse wanted to please her owner so much. And I could see that it was just because she was uncomfortable and her shoulder was stuck, so she couldn't fully engage. And so we got them a new saddle, put this new saddle on, and I just received a text the other day. She's like, I'm living my dreams on this horse. She's like, we've been going to cow sorting, we've been doing this. And she's like, she's just a completely different horse. And she always knew she had the potential to be happy doing her job. But that mare now is so excited to please her owner, and she can. And I think too, what's so important is horses have a harder time listening when they're in pain because they have this pain in their shoulder. So if they get a little, nudge by a leg, they're going to be like, I've got so many pressure points on me right now. I have no idea what your leg is asking me. So that type of stuff, just that connection and that ability, it frees the horse up to please their rider like they want to. And so that made me so happy. That one really made me so happy this week.
oh, I love it. Oh, I hope everyone's listening to this. Please, there's hope.
Yes.
And
Oh my
and
gosh, there is.
to be able to create and foster and have a beautiful connection with your horse when you take these things away that are blocking that, then you have a true symbiotic relationship with this beautiful sentient being. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yes.
So, a lot of equestrians struggle with saddle fitting. And I'm going to ask you, what are some of the common mistakes that you see? And how can riders avoid these common mistakes? Or do you think, like, I mean, sometimes I think people have a saddle and go through five different horses, but never change the saddle. Like I at one time had four horses, but I had 15 saddles. Like I did, right? Like it's just the way I didn't have one saddle fits all. And there wasn't a one that I didn't love, but just wasn't right for every horse. But what can a rider avoid, or what should they do before they go out and select a saddle? Do they enlist help? of a good
Yes.
saddle fitter that, you know, I mean, save yourself some time and pain, literally,
Yeah.
right?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I will say this, like I empathize with how expensive this is. Like saddles are expensive, saddle fitters are expensive, but at the end of the day, like our horse's back is such a crucial part. And it's not just their back. Like, you know, the I will ask somebody because I'll look at the shoulders and like, what does your farrier say? And the farrier will tell me exactly what they see in the feet that leads to the shoulders, that leads to the back. And I'll say, what does your chiropractor say? And the chiropractor and I will work together to make sure that this horse, we're really working in tandem, that this horse is as comfortable as they can be. So it's a whole body approach. But the biggest mistakes I see, I will say, like, one, sometimes it's a very simple solution. Like, sometimes it is, you don't need to get a new saddle. Sometimes it's just like, so say you have a dressage saddle and it hasn't been flocked in a very long time. And the girl actually that's working for me, she's shadowing me. So it's very exciting. She will be a part of the GMD saddle fitting team. She had a saddle and she joined because of this story. So she had a saddle and her back was killing her all the time, but it fit her horse. And I went out and I said, yeah, this great fit for your horse. It's just a little low in the front because the flockings weren't in. So I literally I flocked the front the tiniest bit, which is right. So putting wool in, I know sometimes people like I wasn't familiar what flocking was years ago. So we just put some wool in the front, and she texted me a few weeks later. She's like, my back pain is gone and my horse is moving freely. I'm like, it's great, like the balance point. So that's where the biomechanics for me really come in, because the balance point of a saddle sometimes is all that needs to be adjusted. It's like, no, don't, this saddle's great. We just need maybe some shims in the front, you know, to
Yeah.
make sure that that shoulder is really clear. Another thing I see, a big one, is the saddle will quote unquote fit in all areas, but the way, and this is getting like really into the nitty gritty, so I'll try to keep it concise, but the way that the panel meets the tree, so at the front in the top where it sits on the horse's wither, sometimes the panel just comes out a little harshly and it actually balances itself by grabbing the wither. And it's
Mm.
something that most wouldn't notice. And so always feel, this is what I recommend. Always feel underneath the saddle all over and just go, oh, that's a little hard right there, or that sits a little weird. And your intuition is probably correct. Like I get a lot of calls, and I don't mean this in any way against anybody, but they'll be like, I've had the saddle checked, but I just don't feel, something still feels a little wrong. And I'm like, you're probably right. And I'll go out and it'll be something like that, a very specific thing, or the back of the saddle won't sit very well, so it'll slide against the horse's spine. That
Mhm.
will cause behavior problems. So yes, I think it's really important to use a saddle fitter before investing in a saddle, but also like listen to your horse. A lot of times people will tell me, for whatever reason, my horse goes beautifully in this saddle. And I will come out and the saddle will be not really your atypical, or not really your typical fit, but it'll be like the horse has lordosis, right? So kind of a sway back. And for whatever reason, the way that this tree sits, when that horse starts to move, it can lift itself up and into the tree. So those will actually, I'll encourage people to fit them in correctly because it actually helps them lift.
Yeah.
So there's so many different things where it's just like, typically if I hear somebody say my horse loves to move in this saddle, but the saddle that fits them, they don't. I'm like, well, we're going with the one that they love to go in.
Hey.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they really are. They're just such good spokes horses for themselves. But I do recommend um, so my big tips on hiring a saddle fitter. So I think that's super important because there's so many different fitters and everybody has so many different philosophies. And I'm all for all the philosophies as long as it works for that specific horse. I'll use all the philosophies and do some crazy weird things just to make one horse comfortable. But I think really looking for a fitter that cares deeply about the horse and is willing to do things a little bit differently. So, you know, and I'll never, like, I rep certain brands. I'm very specific that I stay independent, but I do have certain brands I carry because they work very well and I need to have things to show to people. So I'm never against a brand rep, but just kind of talk to people in your area and you'll get a sense of who really cares about the horse by the reviews from people around you. I think that's kind of, people will be like, oh, they just really liked my horse. Like it's just, I think even, sometimes it's just as simple as that. Like people really want to help. And I think that most saddle fitters really want to help. So just make sure that you're working with somebody that has a good reputation and they're not just trying to sell a saddle. So that is tough. And I think that the last biggest mistake I see, and it's not the rider's fault, but they will say, well, I spent this much money on this saddle. It can't not fit. It's
Mhm.
almost like what is that buyer? Uh, there's a word for it, but I'm blanking.
Buyer's remorse.
Not buyers, but it's like
I'm gonna
uh,
make it work because I
kind of.
have it. I'm gonna make it fit.
Yes, kind of like it's like, well, it was fit for my horse, so it has to fit. And sadly, and I hate when I see this because it's never good news, but that's not always the case. So I think the biggest thing is just listen to your horse. And I think most of the time our guts are right.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. All right. Couple more.
Okay.
So you've combined physical practices like yoga and saddle fitting with mindful practices like meditation. Do these different approaches work together to create a holistic experience for both horse and rider?
Okay, I'm sorry. Do you mind repeating that one more time?
Nope. You've combined the physical practices of yoga and saddle fitting with mindful practices
Yeah.
of, like meditation.
Yes.
So, how do these different approaches work together to create a holistic experience for both horse and rider?
Ooh, okay. Um, so I think a lot of times when I speak about this, we're very clouded by the shoulds, by the I need to get this done, or in order to prove myself as a rider, I have to perform at this level, or I have to go, and again, nothing against us. We have so much pressure put on ourselves. There's, of course, we feel this way. And I love our horse people, but we do tend to be a little bit goal oriented, I'll say. All of
Mhm.
us. I haven't met one that's not. So I think it's very important. And we do, of course, we care so deeply about the horses, but just like for our own day-to-days, sometimes we get clouded by all the things we feel like that need to get done. So I find that when we offer ourselves the opportunity to just breathe and to be, answers and listening to our horses becomes a lot easier. So when we're able to take a step back and go, okay, I'm just going to be present, all of a sudden we notice that our horse is a little bit less able to lift its left shoulder than it is its right, or my saddle's sitting a little bit over to the right and I hadn't noticed that before. Or, you know, sometimes too, it's just going slow with them when we tack them up. Sometimes it's doing the girth a little bit slower. It's just letting them know that we're there with them, that we're not in a rush. And, all of a sudden you'll notice these little minute differences that make such a huge difference. So I do really feel like it has, and it goes the other way too. I find that when we slow down and look for the saddle fit, all of a sudden we're noticing things about our horses that we hadn't noticed before, or like little, just little cute quirks that they have that we're like, oh, I hadn't noticed that my horse does this when I do this. And I think it's just a really cool way to get to know them on a deeper level.
I like that. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Your meditation-based clinics seem quite unique in the equestrian world. I love it. I
Thank
do.
you.
And I see it manifesting more and more where it can be most helpful and beneficial. Could you walk us through a typical meditation session and explain how it benefits the horse and rider?
Oh, I would love to. Um, Would it be okay if I let a little breath work right here, actually?
Oh, please, please do. You are preaching to the choir. Let's
Okay.
go.
All right. So I'm going to invite you just to close the eyes for a moment. And I just want you to take a few breaths here. Just giving yourself this space to pause. And very gently, as if somebody opened up a door from your chest into the abdomen, I invite you to allow the breath to float deeper into the body. Allowing the shoulders to relax. Allowing the abdomen to soften. Allowing the hips to soften. And I invite you to bring your awareness into the heart center for a moment. And I want you to think about how grateful you are for the horses in your life. With no pressure, with no need to do anything, but just simply being grateful for them as a being. Allowing this feeling to expand with warmth in the heart. And picturing this horse, whatever horse comes to mind or horses, and just sharing with them this feeling of gratitude that you have for them. Honoring and respecting them as the being that they are, their own individual, and how special it is that they allow us to share this connection with them. And allowing them to share with you the healing energy that they so openly offer. And I'm going to offer you this mantra to repeat in the mind that I find many of us equestrians need. And then just repeating in the mind, I am enough. I have always been enough. And I will always be enough. And just for this moment in time, I invite you to release any expectations, any pressure, and just simply be. Sitting in this feeling for just a moment longer. And gently deepening the breath. And slowly, whenever you're ready, opening the eyes and coming back into this moment.
Thank you. I don't know why that got me really emotional.
Mm. And crying is so common in these clinics.
Yeah, I'm sure. I love it. I love it. And those words so resonated with me when I have my adult participants in my inner child healing work speak to their inner child. I see you, I hear you, you are enough, you are loved. I love you just the way you are. There's things that for a lot of us were absent in childhood.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely.
I have one more question for you, my dear.
Sure.
What advice would you give to horse owners who are struggling to understand their horse's discomfort, but they're not sure where to start with assessing the saddle or even their own communication methods?
One, I'm so grateful that you want to listen. I think I find that it's the people that are so hard on themselves that are the ones that are trying the hardest for these horses. So to give a moment to themselves to just say, I'm trying, and your horse knows it. They really do. They care so deeply when we care so deeply. So I think that that's one, to take a deep breath and a pause and to go with your intuition and to start slowly, start one thing at a time to making these horses more comfortable. Um, I really think it's like, in that meditation we just talked about, or in these clinics, it's just we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I'm so impressed when people, are trying so many things for these horses, and it can get so overwhelming. And I really understand that. So I think to just give yourself a moment to go out there and just be with your horse for a second. Just start there. Just go out in the pasture and just be like, you know what? I'm just grateful that I have this horse, that this horse is, that I can even stand next to this horse. And I think when we boil it down to our blessing all the way down, away from the riding, away from all this, just the connection first, I think that for me, that helps so much with that overwhelm feeling. Like, it's funny because I talk about in the clinic so often, people benefit so much from equine therapy. Yet, as equestrians, I feel like we almost skip the healing portion of them because we've gotten used to how incredible they are. So we jump right over and go into like the doing and the all these things. So give yourself that moment to go back and just be with them and allow their healing to be with you. And I think from there, so many incredible just ideas will come to you that you're like, oh, I hadn't even like, Mary Shields, my saddle fitter from Tampa, Florida, that just, I gave my horse time off and I just said, you know what, I'm going to take this slowly and I'm going to piece this together. And all of a sudden, this person shows up in my life with an answer. So, and it recently, something very similar just happened to me. I have a mare that she is a puzzle and a half. And I was on the phone with a chiropractor, had heard about my saddle fit assessment and got in touch with me because she's all about energy work, and we just had such an incredible conversation. And then I somehow just brought up my horse and just in conversation, and she goes, I'm coming to see her. Like, I have an idea. She just had like this download. I don't know.
Yep, yep.
And it's just like she came into my life at the right time. And I think it's like everything is happening exactly as it's supposed to. And if you're listening to your horse, good things will come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love to drag. And it's funny, the facility owner, she'll come by on the gator and she'll see me just sitting in an Adirondack chair with my horse. And she's like,
Yeah.
that's what I like to see. I love it. I even have a hammock to put under his run-in to just, oh yeah, because we just
I
love.
love that.
Yes, it's such a beautiful, the energy goes back and forth, and it's just this, you feel such an array of, like euphoria, and as you said, you get these boom things that flashes of enlightenment and
Yes.
downloads, and then peace and tranquility. And it's just allowing ourselves to get quiet enough to let that connection be. And it's there. We just have to tune in and tune out of all the distractions in life, right?
Oh, 1,000%. And I'm fully like, they, yeah, like they love when we just want to be around them because that's all they want. They just want, and it's so true. Like, and whether it's that, like, and this is really where I go, really down the path of frou-frou, but
But
sometimes
I
I
love it.
right? I'm like, sometimes I'll just be standing with her and I'm like, I have this feeling and I don't know what this feeling is, but I have a feeling. And then all of a sudden a vet will come out and they will, without me saying anything or prompting anything, they'll say exactly what I said or what I felt around her. Or like I had this animal communicator come out for her and she like said exactly what I had been feeling. And it's just like there's an energy there. And exactly like you said, when we tune out enough to tune in, they really can communicate in ways that are just so special. Or just like a hunch where you're like, huh, I wonder if, or I feel like, and it's magical.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, the magic of equine. Gabby, thank you so very much for
Oh,
this.
thank
And
you.
again, oh, you are most welcome. I'm honored to sit in your presence and share, and hear all that you have to enlighten everyone. I see you just expanding in such a way, and I'm grateful for people like you. So thank you, because this is something. Even as a child, I felt that communication with horses, and I felt kind of odd. And I was you, girl. I was you. I had three older sisters who were showing. Two of them, they did show jumping. They and they were really natural riders. You know what I mean? I
Oh, no.
struggled everything. And same with on a mountain bike. Like I was like, I am not gifted. Trust me. I got to work at this stuff. And
Yes.
same with riding, right?
Yes.
Only one in our whole family who still is into horses.
I always talk about this. Sometimes I think a natural talent is not a blessing because it comes almost too easily and they don't have to go through all these things. And it's so interesting that you just said that. I really do feel that.
Like I learned everything the hardest way possible.
Yeah, so I'm not letting go of it. It took a lot.
Yep. I'll never forget. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to our viewers, all the information to get a hold of this beautiful soul right here is in the description box. Please consider going out to Gabby's website and get yourself educated a little more. There's always more we have to learn. So thank you. And we'll
Oh,
be in touch, okay?
well, thank you so much. And thank you for all you do to share all this wonderful information. And I just think, and thank you to everybody that listened. And I hope you have a really incredible time with your horse.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.